So this, in the Marine Corps, we call this the I love me slide. So you talk about yourself. I went to Parrish Island. This was in 1988. I went during the late spring, early summer. And it was not a very good summer vacation, but we got through it. I went to Marine Corps Security Forces in Sicily. I was telling my wife this the other day. I was in line in the Marine Corps. They tell you what you're going to do. You don't choose. I'd like to do this. They tell you what you're going to do. So there was a table with 2 Marines, and they had orders, and you had to stand in a single file line. And you walked up after School of Infantry, and I kept hearing submarine duty, submarine duty, submarine duty. And I'm like, oh no, submarine duty. And so I got to the front of the line. They said Sigonella, Sicily. And I said, thank goodness. And I walked away. And I went to my friend. I go, what is Sigonella, Sicily? I don't even. He goes, oh, that's in Italy. And I said, oh, great. So I went to security forces there. Guarded nuclear weapons. Was a bodyguard driver for high-ranking visitors and things like that. Then I went to 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, 2nd Mardiv, where I was deployed as a forward observer to Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Called in 1 live fire mission while I was there. It was a FPF, a Final Protective Fire, on the first night. And then I used my GI Bill to go to college, where I studied philosophy and also cybersecurity. And I worked as a correctional officer at a prison during the night and went to school during the day. And there's some pictures of a younger, thinner me. And I went to jump school, for U.S. Army jump school. I had orders to go there. And I went there, and I was checking in, and the Army gentleman told me, hey, just go grab a rack somewhere. I can't jump you in. There's a fatality on the drop zone. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And there's messing with me. It wasn't messing with me. 2 people died that week while I was there. So I was actually at airborne school for, I don't know what is it, it's 8 weeks? I was there for like 3 months because they kept retraining us. But those are the ribbons, and I moved on to cybersecurity. So this is going to be difficult for me because, as mentioned, I probably have a diverse understanding of cybersecurity. So just by a show of hands, how many know, a good amount about cybersecurity? So there's a couple people. And then how many know how to spell security? Yeah, okay. All right. How many don't know how to spell security, doesn't know anything about it? Okay, so I think I have a good range of where we're at. So I'll give you not a basic, but a enhanced basic overview. So in the past, the battlefield in the cyberspace was, we had network boundaries. So you had firewalls and intrusion prevention systems and things like that around your corporate network, with the understanding that the bad guys were on the outside and the good guys were on the inside. Now that perimeter has eroded. It's no longer there because we have third-party partnerships with people. We have connected infrastructures with others. Like in north of Grumman, we did a lot of work, as you can imagine, with the DoD. So we had a lot of interconnected networks. And then you have increased adversarial capabilities, which we'll get into in a second. And then we just have to assume that the bad guys are in our networks and operate our businesses that way. You have to know thy enemy. And so this is not a complete list, but this is a good list of all the different bad people there are out there from a cybersecurity perspective. The first is what we call nation-state adversaries, or APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. These are people who are very well funded. Oftentimes they're military. They use a very strong division of labor. So I've been part of four major incident responses in my career, and 3 of them were APT. And they use stealth. They don't want to be caught, so they'll hang out in your network, and you usually don't find them. Usually the FBI comes knocking on your door and tells you they're in there. And then they have a division of labor, so they'll have one team. Their only responsibility is to break into the network, and then when they're done, they step away. And then you can see another team move in, and they look for the specific things they're looking for, and then they package them up, and then they move off, and then another one comes in, and then finally another one comes in and cleans up all the digital footprints. They use custom tools. They can write tools. I've had one, we were in the data center, and we found the malware that they were using. They wrote it themselves. It was very specific to our company. And so we took a USB and plugged it in to copy it so that we could reverse engineer it and see how they did it. And as we were doing that, it self-destructed. So it was like they knew that they didn't want people to copy it, so if they had a copy execution, it would delete the file. So they're very, very advanced. The next one is e-crime threat actors. This obviously, it's financially motivated. You know, they're trying to steal information. We'll talk about it here in a minute, but it used to matter what industry your company was in. That's no longer the case, and we'll talk about that. But ransomware is a big part of that. They have access brokers. They actually have companies where they'll steal information and then they'll sell it to bad guys, and they get profit, and you know, they share profit margins and things like that. It's very well advanced. And then you have hackers, either individual ones or in groups, and these are your stereotypical ones. Maybe, you know, people in a basement with a hoodie on or something like that. Or it could be a group of people all working together. They have different levels of skill. You have some that are called script kiddies who don't really know how to do the hacking, so they'll use custom scripts that are developed by people who do know how to hack, and they'll sell it to them. Then you have hacktivists, who are people who are very noisy. They don't like your politics. They don't like, you know, usually it's environmental or war or something like that. And then they'll deface your website or do a denial of service, something that's very loud. And then lastly, you have insider threat, which could be a disgruntled employee, or it could be somebody like Walt in the accounting department who just clicked on a link and let the bad guys in. You don't know. So those are the types of enemies that we're dealing with. You have to also know yourself. I mentioned earlier about the industry type. And so I was in aerospace and defense for a long time. We did some stuff in financial services and things like that. And yes, those are very special industries, and they usually have a lot of really good security. But everybody is a target, even a small company, because ransomware leveled the playing field. So adversaries, they don't care what industry you're in now, because they just lock you out from your computers and they demand a ransom. They're going to get 100% of the value of that hack every time. Whereas if they steal data, that data has a shelf life. It's going to, people will change their credit card numbers, and the data may no longer be viable to use. So it has a shelf life. But with ransomware, it's 100% of the value of the attack every time. So this is not going to go away. Ransomware is here to stay. You need to know your risk tolerance, like what, you know, your company, how do they feel about risk? Are they a little bit more risky? They want to take a little bit more risk? Or is it somebody who, like aerospace and defense, they don't want to do a lot of risk. They want to protect everything. Asset management, you have to understand where all your stuff is, so you need to know what you have in order to protect it. So you have to have a good understanding of that. Vulnerabilities, I mentioned here that, you know, you see a lot of movies about hackers, and they're you know, drinking Mountain Dew, and they're typing furiously, and they're using all these advanced things, and Tom Cruise is hanging from wires going up and down and stuff like that. When in actuality, it's just they're leveraging unpatched systems. So if there's a server that's not patched that has a vulnerability on it, they'll go in that way. They're not going to use their custom code to break into your network if you have an open door. So that's the focal point, is your vulnerabilities. Understand where your vulnerabilities are and get them patched. Your defensive posture, you have to know what your business strategy is, the risk to it, and how you can apply a cybersecurity program to that. And then lastly is your supply chain, where you see companies, large retail companies that were breached and had significant impact, all because their heating and air conditioning vendor was breached and they got in through them. Now, there's stories of a large corporation getting hacked because somebody exploited a vulnerability in the web-enabled fish tank they had in the office. You know, so all your third parties, you need to understand, you know, from a risk perspective, what they're doing. Incident response is when something does happen, and it always does. It's not a matter of if something happens; it's when something happens. So you have to be prepared. So we have a very strong detection program to be able to understand when baselines are exceeded, like we have thresholds of normal activity, and when that exceeds those thresholds, we know that something's going on. And we have vendors that help us with this as well. We also have a very good documented playbook for responding to incidents. And I carry it with me everywhere I go, kind of like the president carries the football with the nuke codes and stuff. I carry a small thing that has all the codes in it for that.
Just a quick question
Sure.
on detection.
Yeah.
When you talk about that, the thresholds that you set, are those monitored by systems or are those monitored by people? Like, in other words, you
Yeah.
set the threshold,
Yeah.
is that automatically then you have a automated system to shut things down and control things? Or do you need somebody like a watch officer to go, hey, this is
Right.
a problem?
Yeah, it's a blend of both. So we have a internal capability, but our first line of defense is a outsourced, what we call MSSP, or Managed Security Service Provider, and it's with a company called CrowdStrike, and they provide a lot of detection capabilities for us, and they use a lot of technology to look at this stuff. But they're people behind that. And then if there's an anomaly, they throw it over the wall to us, and then we'll take our people and see if it's actually something that we want to look at. Is it business relevant or not? Yeah.
Having done some of this in the military, one of the complaints, or one of the things I noticed is the government has tended to default to the human side,
Yeah.
where businesses tend to default to obviously it's a blend of both, but they tend to stay on the technology side.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a fair?
I think it is, yeah. And we'll talk about another driver to that here in a second. It's really going to accelerate the machine part of that. And then you also want to partner very closely with outside counsel, because if it's a very sensitive breach, they're going to want to do it under privilege. And when they do it under privilege, there's certain rules that you have to follow, and working very closely with them is helpful. And then the SEC just released a lot of regulations in December of 2023 for companies to publicly notify investors through a 10K or an 8K about the incident as it relates to the breach. And you have 4 business days to notify the SEC of this. And so they have a lot of language in there about materiality. So you want to understand from a corporate perspective what is material to your company and what's not. And then practice. We do that all the time. We do tabletop exercises for the executives, and we do one for the technical teams. And I like to do special things, like we'll partner with our third-party provider, and they'll build these scenarios. And so we'll talk through the scenarios, and in the middle of the scenario, they'll stop us and say, hey, the Wall Street Journal is on the phone. They want to quote, they heard a rumor that you guys have been breached. And then they step away, and then, okay, well, now we got to address this. And then those are called injections. And then they'll inject another one where they say your stock price just went down, 10%. How do you want to react? And they do all this to distract you from the core response. And so it's really good practice. I like to start, we did this, I think it was in August of last year. I can't remember exactly when it was, but we did one, and I started off by welcoming the executives to the incident response tabletop exercise. And as I was talking, I coordinated with the local FBI agents, local FBI office in Atlanta, and an agent walked in and notified us that we had been breached. And we quickly told them that it's okay. It's just we're acting right now. But that's how you find out typically when you have a breach. I think 49% of the time you find out by an external person, and it's usually the FBI. I've been on the unfortunate end of 3 of those FBI victim notifications. It's funny, I have a friend of mine who was in the FBI when I lived in Nashville, and he would come over every once in a while to go to lunch with me, and I didn't know. He'd walk over, and I'd see him, and I'd freak out. He says, no, it's okay. I just was coming here to have lunch with you. So,
So how does the FBI know?
They'll do, the language they use is, in support of another investigation, we found evidence that could lead us to believe that your IP addresses are related to your company.
The point is they're not actively monitoring.
No,
They're just finding out and investigating.
No, they're not, yeah. And we have very strong rules with what we can share with them and what they can share with us. And because I was in the military, I had the high clearance levels, I was able to talk to the FBI a lot, so that's important too. I wanted to include a couple slides because of the venue that we're in that relates to the traditional battlefield versus the cyber battlefield. And you'll see, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you'll see that the tactics are a lot, there are many of the same ones, you know, reconnaissance and defense and troop buildup and things like that. The only thing that differentiates between the two is the technology, you know, but the tactics are all pretty much the same. You see reconnaissance, you see people trying to do some recon of your network and the people and employees of your company, where, you know, what departments do they, you know, work in, who's in finance, who's not, things like that. And then you see people, whenever we apply a defense mechanism, like we see them attack, and we apply a defense, you can see them shift. And, you know, it's real time. You know, you can actually see them evade the defenses. But the impacts are also very different as well. But a lot of the same tactics. So to bring the point home, I made some examples. I was going to share some war stories with you. Normally we do this on the 12th floor in Chesty's over a beer or something like that, but we'll do the best we can here. So the first is traditional battlefield. That's a picture. My mom bought me a Kodak disc camera. It was really small, you know, almost like a disposable camera. I took it with me to Desert Storm. That's us breaching the minefield. And we couldn't have done it without, and I'll always remember that flag. That's an LAV and it has the Marine Corps flag on top, and they're blasting over these speakers the Marines hymn. And it was really motivating. And so the combat engineers cleared the way through, I don't know what it's called, it's not det cord, but it's piping that they shoot out and explode. And they, what's that? That's it. Thank you. And so we drove through those, and we breached 2 minefields. And without them, we couldn't have done that. I don't know if you go on YouTube and watch General Schwarzkopf, he does a press release back in the day, and he talks about the 1st Marine Division, the 2nd Marine Division, and this breach. And he says it's going to be studied in military history for years on how to do it because we were so effective at doing it while taking artillery fire. So a lot of collaboration there. We had, it was after we breached the first area, we were on our way to the 2nd breach point, and we started getting artillery fire at us. And within seconds, it stopped. An ally took out the artillery bank. We don't know who it was or who took it out, but just somebody was looking out for us and helped us. So you always have people helping you when you're under fire. And then lastly, we did a lot of preemptive awareness. The CIA and the Air Force and the Army developed these propaganda leaflets that were dropped all over the place in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait that have pictures of this is how you surrender, muzzle down, you know, surrender. And then if you do that, you get to sit underneath the American flag with all of these great people, and you have fruit, and you have bread, and you have everything you want to eat, and stuff like that. And there was one I even saw that had George H.W. Bush sitting with them. And so those dropped everywhere so people would see that and they would lose their will to fight. On the cyber front, on the breach response, you also have help. You have the infrastructure team, the network team, all your endpoints. All those folks are helping you. You can't do it on your own. And then, like I said, there's lots of incidents I was part of that I did not do it on my own. And then you take fire a lot of times in the middle of the engagement. You have questions from outside counsel and PR firms, and you need federal law enforcement help. All these people help you when you're under fire, so that's a really good thing too. And then preemptive awareness, just providing training to your employees about how important cybersecurity is. So, this is the book I wrote. This is more for boardroom, independent directors of a boardroom. I won't go into too much detail here, but it's the role of the Chief Information Security Officer. In addition to being the CEO of an LLC, Novel Security, I also serve currently as the CISO for Chief Information Security Officer for Newell Brands, who makes Graco Baby, Rubbermaid, Coleman Outdoors, Sharpie pens, and we're based in Atlanta. And I was in that role. I've been in that role for 3 years. And Prior to that, I was at Bridgestone, Hertz, Northrop Grumman, and a few others. But it's a common role in companies today. But it's not, it's still a relatively new role because it's still kind of seen as like a technical type of thing. And that's how it started. Cybersecurity started getting more and more important, and then they just looked around and said, who knows more about cybersecurity? Okay, you're the technical guy, okay, you're the new CISO. And so as a result, you have these very technical people leading these programs. And so what the evolution has been in our role is having more business savvy. So a lot of us went back and got MBAs and did all kinds of work to understand the business, because you want to be able to apply security with the business. And then it slowly has evolved into an executive role. There's still challenges, but there's a lot of help from external drivers, like the importance of cybersecurity. We have a good reach within our organizations. We can understand what everybody's working on. And then we have executive level access. I've been working with very, very senior people on boards, admirals, retired admirals, generals, presidential candidate, White House chief of staff, CEOs of companies, very serious men and women. And that has helped to elevate the role as well. And then cybersecurity versus compliance. A lot of times you'll hear, well, you have this compliance or this regulatory type of activity. You want to make sure that you address that. And I think a lot of times people focus on the regulatory stuff when we're trying to explain to them that, yes, it's important. You want to be able to, meet the regulatory stuff, but there is no end state in cybersecurity. There's no end point in time where you say, okay, I'm in regulation with this and I'm done. You're never done in cybersecurity. I wrote an article for a book, a friend of mine, called The Colonoscopy of Cybersecurity. And basically it's a comparison of when I started at a company, I was given benefits. And one of the benefits was life insurance. And you can ask for more life insurance if you wanted it. Well, I wanted it because I wanted to take care of my family should something happen to me. If you got the higher level, you had to go through a medical exam. And so I did that. The guy came out to my office. He took my height, weight, pulse, did a urinalysis test. He packaged all the information up, sent it off, and 2 weeks later, the insurance company came back and said, for the level of insurance you're asking for, you're approved because of your health. And so then fast forward a month later, I go to my general primary care physician. I have my annual checkup. And we do blood work, we do the urinalysis, we do the EKGs, a colonoscopy, all those things to determine, yes, you're in good health. And so I was thinking, what's the difference? They're both looking to see how healthy I am, but why are there different exams? And I thought about it, and it's because the primary care physician is like cybersecurity. It's more deeply embedded in looking at the health of somebody, whereas regulatory stuff just wants to say, okay, did you meet the minimum requirements to be able to get this, and check the box, and that's it. You can't use that to say that your company is secure, but you can use the other to say that you're secure and you meet regulatory requirements. So that's the difference in that. This is the structure usually of a board oversight. You have a full board, audit committee, technology committee, or a cybersecurity committee. Cybersecurity committees are rare. Technology committees do occur, and audit committees are the ones that usually oversee cybersecurity. The average time is for me to present to my board is 15 minutes a quarter. And so it's an hour in a year. And so that's where the title of the book comes, The Shortest Hour, because I don't believe that 1 hour a year is enough to talk about something as critical as cybersecurity. You have different kinds of board engagements. I talk to the full board. I talk to the audit committee. When a new director is onboarded, I usually talk to them. And then special projects, because we're in such a unique field, and because we have high level of secrecy and clearances and things like that, they often come to us for special projects that might have to do with reviewing or investigations or something like that of very sensitive types of activities. So their CISOs are good for that. And then I talked about the SEC regulations. There used to be a disclosure clause in there when they introduced it to say, we want you to tell us about your board expertise when it comes to cybersecurity. Who on your board has this expertise? And they dropped that rule in the final regulations. I think they'll come back because it's important to understand the people who are providing your oversight, that they understand the topic. And I think the language they use were boards of directors understand risk management, and that can be applied to many different types of domains, cybersecurity being one of them. So they don't need to have a good level of understanding of cybersecurity. They just use general risk management stuff. And I would respond that the same argument can be made back in 2002, whenever Sarbanes-Oxley came out. It was not uncommon for a board of directors to have no one on the board who understood finance or could read a balance sheet. And then the SEC came out with the regulations because of the Sarbanes-Oxley to say you have to have a finance expert on your board. I think the same thing's going to happen in cybersecurity at some point. This is the board oversight of cybersecurity. I start with an assessment of the program and build a strategy, and then we execute it. And then technology evolves, business strategies evolve, so you have to constantly look at your strategy. And I also, every time I talk to the board, each presentation builds off the last one. So it's like one chapter in a larger book. It's only 15 minutes, but it's comprehensive because you're doing it over time. I talk about in the book financing cybersecurity. Option one could be a thoughtful year-over-year prioritized investments based on risks, or you can just dump money at it after you've been breached. I've been through both of these. Thankfully, the companies I've worked for recently have been option one. Option two has happened to me in my career, earlier in my career, where we didn't do a lot in cybersecurity. We did a little bit, but not a lot from an investment perspective. And then something big happened, and I had to tell the CFO to stop giving me money. I can't spend it as fast, and we can't implement it because they just wanted to make the problem go away, so they dumped money. That's not the way to do it, by the way. And I mentioned it in the small piece here that you can't rely on cyber insurance because cyber insurance is only going to pay for the costs that are incurred in response to that incident, not preventative type stuff. So if you have a person come in and do an assessment and help you to respond to it, and they say, oh yeah, by the way, you don't have any antivirus on your machines or something, they'll pay for that guy to come in and tell you how much he charges, to tell you that, but they won't pay for you to put antivirus on your machines. It's not preventative stuff, it's just in relation to the response. And then a vision, I include a vision. We talked a little bit about it. I think that there's a difference between experience and expertise. We certainly don't need every single board member to be experts in cybersecurity, but I do think that every single board member should have some fluency in cybersecurity because they can't engage and they can't challenge one another on the best way to move forward with oversight if only one of them understands the topic. And then lastly, I mentioned they do, a lot of them will outsource a cybersecurity consultancy, say, hey, come in and tell us what's going on at the board level. That's common, but what happens is because it's a systemic risk and because it evolves so much, you're going to be doing that a lot. And so there's a cost element to that as well. Why not just have somebody on the board who understands it? You don't have to incur that cost. I talked about board updates. We do full board updates, 30-minute updates, monthly meetings with the cyber board expert, and this is the future state on cyber that I think we should move to. Shift from 10 to 15 minutes per quarter to 30 minutes, things like that. You can't assemble people and talk about technology. We did good. It's 39 minutes before we said the letters AI. So I think to your point earlier, AI is going to help us with that. It's already helping us with it through machine language and machine learning and artificial intelligence. One of the things that I do with my team is we haven't caught up from a cybersecurity industry perspective yet on AI. It's the same thing in wireless. Remember when wireless first came out, everybody was scared to death of that. And over the years, the risks have kind of, been, subsided a little bit because security companies came up and helped you with securing your wireless. The same thing with consumer devices. Worst day in the world is when Apple releases a new technology product. The next day, all the employees want to buy it and implement it into your network, and it's a consumer device. So we'll catch up, but for now, the basic is just focus on the policy, the behaviors that you want the employees to do, not the technology. And I know that sounds weird because I'm a technology executive saying don't focus on the technology, but I'll give you an example. At Northrop Grumman, we had a really good data center. This was back when people had their own data centers. And we had conference rooms in it. With the flip of the switch, you can go from a classified to an unclassified environment. And it was really state of the art. And we did not want cameras in the data center. So we wrote a policy and put up placards and signs, no cameras in the data centers. And this is about the time when the camcorders you used to hold on your shoulder, they started getting smaller to like really small. And we said, oh, okay, well, no cameras and no camcorders are allowed in the data center. And then phones came out with cameras. So we said, okay, no cameras, no video recorders, and no phones. So what we did was we focused on the technology and not the behavior. No pictures are allowed in the data center. And then the new book, I'll talk a little bit about that. That's just for the CISO to maintain relationships across all of your business and using marketing concepts to do that. And then lastly, I end with some tips for all of us. Just email security, don't click on links. Emails are getting more sophisticated, so use caution. I have a sheet outside that has some of these same tips on it. Network security, be cautious when using public Wi-Fi. Access and authentication, use strong passwords. Change your passwords on a regular basis. And I'm glaring at the Post-it note on the computer with the password on it, but we're going to. And then leverage multi-factor authentication as much as you can. And online retail, never use a debit card to do that because that's access to your entire account. I would use a special credit card just for online purchases. And then ensure the website has adequate security. Keep don't charge using public kiosks at the airport. And turn on full disk encryption on your computer, keep it in sight. And with that, I can answer any questions that anybody has.
What can't you charge your phone at the airport?
Because a lot of times what they'll do is it's kind of like a ATM skimmer, is bad guys will set up what looks like a legitimate kiosk to charge your phone, but it's not. It's pulling data from your thing. Now, I'm not talking about in the wall, like with your own charger. Yes, you can do that. I'm talking about those kiosks that you plug into. Some of them charge money, charge you for it, but sometimes they don't. Does that help? Yeah, that does good. Yes, sir.
Say Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, a guy sitting in his underwear in his mom's basement.
Yeah.
Who's the biggest threat? State
Wow.
actors or criminal organizations?
I would say it depends on the organization that you're with, but so for people who have trade secrets and research and development, maybe pharmaceuticals or aerospace and defense and things like that, I'll end it this way. I'll say it's not a coincidence that if you look at a battleship from one of those countries you mentioned to a U.S. battleship, they look very much the same. And the reason why they stole the information, to build that, because they jumpstart 5 to 7 years of research and development. The other analogy, the kid in the basement, is a big threat for everybody because they're just trying to get money. So it depends on the environment that you have. Yes, sir.
Let me follow on the senior chief's question. How do you feel about the changes to Cyber Command where they fired the commanding officer and gutted the programs and told them they can't attack Russia and some of our adversaries?
Yeah, so
Put you on the spot.
there's a Marine answer and then there's a CISO answer. But from a business perspective, I don't feel that it's appropriate for any kind of company, not law enforcement or government, I'm talking about a company, to hack back or do anything like that. You're poking the bear. And quite literally, it's often the bear that you're poking. And so I don't believe in that. I think that there could be good outcomes for doing that at the government level and things like that. But I honestly think the way that we end this is through policy and governmental policy and things like that, and trade and stuff like that. We have to do something at that level. If we can't, yes, then you step in and do the hackbacks and take away their ability to fight back. I don't know if you did put me on the spot, but I think I did a good job of answering that.
Your opinion, given that Doge has taken those of us who've taken out student loans and all these things, and shutting down the Department of Education, and there's a huge fear of data breach of our information. What are your thoughts on what happened? Because it's upsetting.
It is. Our data is everywhere, and so it's important to understand where it is. One of the companies I worked for got hacked, and so passport numbers and all those things are out there in the open. It's a huge concern. It obviously is, as a consumer and as a parent, and yeah, I think it's a big thing. I don't know the answer, but yeah, it's a concern for me as well.
Do you recommend as individuals we pay for services like through LifeLock or those companies who are supposed to protect against breaches of our password?
Yeah, if you haven't been offered that already through another breach or something, yes, I would do that. And there's so many out there that you can use. My company at Newell, they offer an option for that as one of the benefits. So we use that. My family, my wife and my children have that. I think it's a valuable service. If anything, it just alerts you, hey, are you trying to, send this information to, and they'll list the thing. It's kind of like your credit card. It's like if you try to buy something and then all of a sudden you'll get a phone call or a text that says, are you trying to spend $48 at Walmart? Yeah, that's me. Okay, but if it's not, then there could be something wrong. So it's a good line of defense, I think.
Virtually all the phishing language, I get the same message, 4 or 5, 40 or 50 a day.
Yeah.
The same word verbiage.
Yes.
From different people.
Yeah.
What's going on?
They're leveraging templates and things like that have already been developed, and they're just spraying them out to 10,000 people. And if one person clicks on it, they were successful. So that's why you get so many. The best thing to do is block those where they're coming from. I do it myself every day. I really do a lot of those. Yes, sir.
Question around Wi-Fi and data breach. I've heard through the grapevine that hackers are trying to find ways to just find an open entryway through Wi-Fi networks, Wi-Fi from home, or even cell phones that are pinging Wi-Fi towers.
Right.
Would the VPN be the best way
Yes.
to?
Yeah. Yeah, VPN is a virtual private network. There's many companies that provide a VPN service that you can put on your computer, and it creates a secure tunnel between your computer and the destination you're going to. And so even though you might be on a less than secure network, Wi-Fi or what have you, it's all encrypted, and it's a secure way to do it, especially if you're going to do banking transactions or anything like that. Definitely want to be on a VPN for that. Yes, ma'am.
I get blocks on articles, like a big white screen on it, so I can't read it. They want me to pay to get
Yes.
ad blocking.
Yes.
Can you remove that in some way?
So there's many different ways to think about this. If you get a link from a friend to an article and it comes up with, hey, you have to pay to do it, that's just if you want to read the article, you have to buy a subscription to that magazine. So that's just typical stuff. But what you're talking about is the spam that pops up that says, hey, you need an ad blocker or something like that. Yeah, that's not, what do we call that, grayware or something like that? Yeah.
It freezes the screen.
Yeah. So the best way to do it with any kind of phishing thing, if they're telling you that they want you to do a service or something like that, don't do it through the links in the email. Like, for instance, if it's Wells Fargo, you get an email from Wells Fargo that says, hey, your account's in danger. Click on this link and I'll show you why. You know, don't do that. Go to Wells Fargo, the website, log in normally and look and see there. And there's nothing wrong there. That's a scam. You can also look at the return email address, and if it's like, says it's from Wells Fargo, but it's a .me account or a Mac account or something like that, you know it's not legitimate. But yeah, be careful.
I've called Apple Care.
Yeah.
And at times too, I have an Apple computer.
Yes.
And he said, yeah, get out immediately.
Yeah.
But on the screen it tells you still too long.
Yeah.
Don't stop the computer.
Usually if they say something really bad's going to happen or something really good's going to happen, if you click on the link and you have to do it like really quickly, they're just trying to get you to do it really quickly. So yeah, you're doing good. Yes. You've been officially deputized in the information security field. Yes, sir.
Have you done any consulting for the military?
I have not. No, sir. No,
Do you think their challenges are similar?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in aerospace and defense, but yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but most of the government data and the aerospace, specifically in aerospace and defense, do not lie in the U.S. government. It lies in free enterprise in different corporations like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, you know, aerospace, all those aerospace and defense companies. So we have to protect those, and there's a lot of good programs in place for those companies to come together to talk about these issues and things like that.
I'll cover that. I mean, it's been a couple of years now since I retired, but the challenge in the military is just the size of the military. And we've got a lot of integrated or older systems. So when a company can say, okay, we're going to a new patch, we're going to change to Microsoft something or other, well, that's literally tens of thousands of computers. And that was our biggest challenge. I left about the cusp of all of that.
Yeah.
It's time consuming and it's hugely expensive.
What's the new thing they have now? What's the new regulation for the government? The CM's, there's a new thing that everybody's talking about in cybersecurity. It's a regulation.
I saw something today.
What's that?
DARPA.
Yes.
They're trying to upgrade the computer systems
I see.
away from the antiquated
Right.
systems.
And you have to do it
It's
according
very
to.
AI
Yes.
heavy, and it's very exciting if anyone wants to look it up, because our systems are so antiquated, and this is very, like jumping light years ahead.
Right.
To be able to protect our critical infrastructure.
Yeah, like water, energy.
Water, energy.
All those.
Yes, and probably government as well.
There was a hack that a friend of mine works for a company. It's a grocery store. I won't mention the name, but somebody broke in and they just little things. You know, they hold all of their milk in these coolers, and they turned the heating and cooling system from 40 degrees or something like that to 400 degrees through the thing, and it ruined all of the milk. Could you imagine if that was a water supply or something like that? It was horrible. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the AI was going to help in terms of protecting, I think, systems. And I'm not sure I'm smart enough to even ask an intelligent question, but what about the other side of how they'll use AI? And it seems like it's a wash, or is it?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So what could be used to protect the individual could be used to assault the individual. And so I think it's AI, we're already seeing it in use by adversaries to quickly be able to attack. But we're using it on the security front too. We have security, email security that leverages AI that looks at patterns and behaviors within the email, whereas a regular email protection device will just look at sender and things like that. This looks at other capabilities like the behavior of the email. When do you get the email? How many people did it go to? Does it look like it's a phishing email? And then you have your endpoint protection, which also leverages a lot of machine learning and things like that. So yes, you're absolutely right. It could be both sides of the coin. Yes, sir.
Would you recommend to use VPNs even in a household network?
Yeah, I usually, and I'm not smart enough on this, but I think usually if you're in your home network, there is some kind of protections in your routers and things like that. But VPNs are always good to use. Mark, what do you think? I mean,
I think it depends on the situation. It's, generally, if you mean using it whilst you're at home, perhaps not necessarily. If you're comfortable with maybe if you've just done some simple things like change the default password on your router so that only you can access it, and because most router passwords are generic, and therefore if you have if it's made by one manufacturer, it'll be the same password for all of those routers, and therefore that's how engineers can sort of fix your problem so easily. But I would definitely recommend that if you're travelling or if you're somewhere that you're not comfortable, that your connection to the internet, which inherently is an untrusted network, then I would advocate, like Lee does, to use a VPN. So if you're in a hotel and you're using the hotel Wi-Fi, particularly if you're doing business work, then using a VPN is extremely helpful to protect your organisation data.
Mark and I work together at New Orleans. He's a former Army in the UK. Very good. Yes, sir.
I believe Microsoft is going from 10 to 11. And they said, at least I got an email from Microsoft to say that after September, 10 will no longer be supported. So does that give you problems with, is it going to be easier for people to hack in if you have 10 or?
Yeah, it's the way that they do that, they take away the support. The operating model will still, the operating system will still be there. We won't lose it or anything like that. You just won't be able to have support for that. And for companies, that's problematic in a lot of ways. So, but it's also problematic to upgrade to the newest version right away. So they have to do testing and things like that. The one thing is you should do is you always should update your computer, with updates. A lot of them are security related. But at the same time, see what it does. I've read something about Microsoft having a new capability where it takes a snapshot of what you're working on. Was it like every 3 seconds or something like that? So that it could easily be recalled. Well, there may be privacy issues with that. Maybe you don't want them to see everything you're doing on the computer. So, good deal. Yes, sir.
So it seems like from a layperson's perspective, and my personal perspective, I need to make sure my computer is protected.
Yes.
But then, how many? It must be 100 entities or more that I trust. Whether it's Amazon or my mortgage or my bank. And you said something earlier about kind of knowing that they're doing the right things.
Right.
Is there any way for you to know or to check or to?
Yeah, so if you look online, you're looking for encryption over the browser or the internet site. So there'll be a padlock oftentimes in the browser line. If you hover over that, it'll tell you what kind of encryption it is and things like that. So you don't want to do something that's unsecure. There's no encryption and it's not secure. That's that's bad.
It's safe to assume, though, that your mortgage company, your bank, those kind of entities are doing the right thing.
It is. You just have to be careful to check it, that you're typing in Amazon and not Amazon or one letter off or something like that. But yeah, the big companies are definitely taking care of stuff. And also don't click on links. Just do that in your browser,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got time for one more question. One more.
All right.
Michael?
I'll give it. So AI is relatively brand new. ChatGPT is really new. It's open source. Just curious question, do you think that's an entryway for hackers to feed in and just kind of absorb this open source?
Right. Yeah, there's different ways that you have to, that we review it at Newell. We have a technical aspect to it, and we have a business aspect to it, and we have a privacy aspect to it. So from a security perspective, we want to make sure that we're using large language models or LLMs that train on a proprietary type of thing. So they can use our data, but only it can't go to the internet. And so we secure it that way. We also channel the number of AI solutions we have. And our CEO helps with that. He sits on a committee that says, bring me your proposals for the use of AI, and if they help to generate profitable top-line revenue growth or bottom-line efficiencies, yes, we'll approve those, but anything else we won't approve. And then the last thing I'll mention is use cases from a legal entity. The example I use all the time is somebody comes to me with a rifle, and they say, I want you to look at this. And I look at it, and I say, okay, yeah, it's got rifling, it's got a safety on it. It's a good rifle. What do you want to use it for? I want to win a gold medal in marksmanship at the Olympics. And, oh, okay, well then, yeah, it's good. Then somebody brings me the same rifle, exact same rifle, and says, what do you think of this rifle? Well, it's good. It's got a safety. It functions properly. What do you want to use it for? I want to rob a liquor store. The technology is the same. The use cases are different. So our legal department's looking at the use cases to make sure we're not sorting out resumes and applications based on certain attributes or things like that. Anything that's illegal, our legal team is looking at it.
You know, I'm gonna ask a question. I'm sure everybody has a phone. Most of them are iPhones, Apple. Alexa is in your homes for most people. What are your thoughts on, so again, they're listening to you all the time.
Right.
Google's listening to you all the time, whether you realize it or not. What are your thoughts on Alexa, iPhones? I mean, I've turned my Siri off on my phone. What are your thoughts on Alexa?
Yeah.
To get in?
Yeah, so it is. It's an entry point. So you just have to be careful. Like if you're not using the Bluetooth on your phone, like if you're traveling and you're not using it, yeah, turn it off. If you're not using the Wi-Fi, turn it off. It's a pain, you have to do it, but you still do it. I don't own Alexa, but my Apple Car Play thing will help me with directions. And I remember one time I was working in Dallas at the time, and I was far away from home, so I couldn't go home for lunch. So I would always go to this sandwich shop to get a sub for lunch, and I would go about the same time every day. And so I was sitting in my office, and all of a sudden it pops up and says, time to go to this location. Like, wow, okay, now he knows too much about, I should confuse it and go to like a health food store or something like that. But yeah, it's a...
Well, I tell you what, this is, so we've been doing this now since we started with the authors and meet the authors a huge amount of time, but this is by far the most questions we've had.
Good.
And again, it's an absolute, as you said, it's an absolutely relevant topic, and you could, there are no stupid questions, and my familiarity is pretty good in some things and absolutely zero in others. So absolutely proud of what you're doing, Lee, and Nancy, nice to meet you. And again, wonderful to meet you. This is a relevant topic, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts on it, and really do appreciate everything. You made us smart.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The bar is open for final drinks, and the restaurant, if anybody's, restaurant's upstairs is open also.
And also, Lee will be signing books and selling some books right out here at by the elevators. And please take advantage of this. And there's a lot of good information in these books that will answer a lot of questions that you all might have.